Welcome to another classic Game Room interview. Today with Inon Zur, music composer for video games, and Bob Rice, who executive produced Journey Escape for the Atari 2600, and today he is the founder of Four Bars Intertainment, which is an agency for video game music composers. And how are you guys today? We're speaking to you at Game Developers Conference in San Francisco.
Everything is great. We're having a blast.
Having a great time. A lot of people, a lot of upbeat new games and companies are being announced here at GDC, and it's just a real, real upbeat kind of environment that we're in.
Well, that's good. Now, let me ask both of you guys, what is the future of music in video games?
Well, I think that the future is already here. I mean, the nice thing about video games, that everything that you call future, for us is already in the present.
That's a great answer.
I mean, and every time like somebody's asking this question, I mean, the future is happening now. And it's not, I mean, and this is a very unique opportunity for people around to observe what's going on. Because very rarely the revolution and what we call the future is happening. And what's happening right now is two things. First, game companies more and more understand the value of music for games. And because of that, they're putting enormous amount of resources into music, from knowledge, from budget, from time, any aspect you could look at, in comparison to what happened 2, 3, 4 years ago. This is one thing. The second revolutionary aspect is the amount of exposure that music for games is gaining around the world with just regular people and not necessarily gamers. It becomes its own genre. It became like a legit and mainstream type of music, something that people can just pop into their CD, play out from their iPod, and listening from the car, from home, regardless of video games, regardless of playing the video game. So these two amazing things are happening as we speak.
Now, can you tell us...
One thing...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Bob Rice, I just wanted to expand on Inon's answer. I spent a lot of time in film and television music as well. And Steven Spielberg has stated that 50% of the entertainment value of all of his films is music and sound. And my belief is that to some degree, plus or minus 10%, the same thing applies to games. But the extraordinary thing that I find about games as opposed to people who compose music for film and television, and Inon does also compose music for film and television, but the thing that I find extraordinary is that consumers, and we've done quite a bit of research on this, they'll go to see a film or they'll watch a TV show, and afterwards you ask them, who's the composer? And they'll say, I don't know, for the film or TV show. But what is absolutely extraordinary that we have found, and again with substantial research, is that the gamers, the people who play games, they know these composers. They know their names, their faces, and all the other games they've scored. And there is a plethora of emails and Facebook conversations that go on where the gamers are actually talking about, Inon Zur music in Lord of the Rings. And they really scrutinize it. I'm just amazed how the fan base has been so loyal and increases.
Well, when you play a game that takes 20 or 30 hours, and you're just immersed in this world with the music that is something that you tend to remember and certainly get moved by, unlike a shorter form piece where you might hear it a little bit and then move on to the next one. So that's I think part of the reason I think that the game themes are so catchy. I actually hear people talk all the time about how their favorite Sega racing games are like Virtua Racing or Virtua Fighter. They'll take the music, rip it onto a CD, and put that in their car. That's their driving music for the car. But Inon, what games have you done the music for?
Well, up to today, I'm working in this industry for about 15 years, and I've done music for over 60 titles, many of them very famous. We're talking about Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age 2, the Prince of Persia trilogy, EverQuest, Crysis, and Baldur's Gate, Lord of the Rings. And the last big one that I did was Lord of the Rings, War in the North.
So these are a few games that people have heard of. Just a few.
I think so.
Well, I'd say I spent, of all of those that you mentioned, the ones I've spent the most time in are Fallout and Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and what you've done for those games definitely captures that weird atmosphere.
Yes, I mean, and I must say that especially those two games have a great challenge, basically, because you're talking about sort of like, a reality that is a step away from reality. So, I mean, it's crisis that happens in the 50s, but now you're in 2020.
Yeah.
So reality evolved in a total different direction. But still, all the environment has some reminiscence of what was there before and what's familiar to us. So capturing this sort of like, from one end, the world as it was in the 50s, twist it, and then bring a futuristic taste to it was a a huge challenge. But I had tons of fun working on those two games.
Let me ask you guys this: when you're composing music for a game, or if you're working with a composer on a game, or is it different than composing for a movie in the sense that you're not composing it for exact moments? Like the shark isn't always jumping out of the water at the exact same time in a video game. Something it's flowing in the background. And how is it? Is that different for you? Do you take a different approach?
Well, let me give you first the example that Bob always loved to give. Okay, in movie or TV show, you sit for an hour. You sit back for an hour or two and watch the movie. In games, you're leaning forward for 20 hours and play actively the game. So the role of music, although it is basically the same, to create some kind of an emotional aspect and the emotional dimension, what I call the fourth dimension, but it's different, because if in movies the music has to sort of like frame the picture, it gives the emotion, work with the picture very closely. In games, actually, the music needs to take an active role to drive the player where we want him to be driven to, and to charge him, with emotions that we want to create. So the music has a way more creative and active role in games, which makes our work, more complicated. And not only that, that usually for games that last between 20 to 30 or 40 hours, we have a budget of only an hour and a half or 2 hours of music. How are you making that fit everything? Well, it's a long story, but